everyone, wishing you all a very happy start to 2025. So in today's video, we are reviewing another Sirui lens. This time it's the new Aurora 85mm f1.4 lens for full frame Sony E-mount, which as you can probably guess from the focal length and the max aperture, is perfectly designed to shoot portraits. And as we've also found out, can also be a fantastic B-roll lens as well for close-up and detail shots. Firstly, full disclosure, this was sent to us by the lovely people over at Sirui, but they haven't told us to say anything specific. They don't get to see this review beforehand, and all thoughts and opinions expressed in this video are fully our own. But a big thank you to Sirui for sending this lens to us and making this video possible. If you are also interested in buying any Sirui lens, we do have an affiliate link, so if you want to support the channel, click on the link in the description box below. So firstly, I think we should get the price out of the way. These retail at £549-ish here in the UK, so this puts it at roughly around the same price as lenses like the Samyang 85 1.4 and a little bit more expensive than the budget options like the Sony and Viltrox 85 1.8s, but also a lot more cheaper than the more premium options like the Sigma 85 1.4 and of course the Sony G Master lenses. So it's not quite like a middle price option, it's more like upper tier budget. We have owned the Sony f1.8 lens and have also used the Viltrox lens as well. And I personally actually really loved the Sony f1.8. It's cheap and cheerful, but also really sharp for the price. I've taken some really nice portraits with it. So it was interesting to see how this lens would stack up in comparison, but one thing that will immediately jump out is the actual build quality of this lens. It's definitely a really nice surprise. With other Sirui lenses, it always felt like the build quality was like decent, but always you could kind of tell they were cutting corners here and there to keep the price down. Whereas this Aurora lens actually feels fairly premium. The lens body is made from aluminum alloy and it looks and feels on par maybe to like a Sigma art lens, maybe not quite as good as that, but definitely somewhere in between Sony's budget line and a Sigma art lens line, which is fair given that's kind of where it's priced at. The design is also really simple and clean with a focus ring and aperture ring, but with the added luxury of being able to turn click on and off. And there is also an AF/MF switch and an AFL button as well. It does feel a lot more premium than the price tag would suggest, and the glass itself also looks really beautiful, but it is also really light and compact, being only about 5 inches long without the lens hood and weighing in at around 550 grams, which I believe is the lightest ever 85mm f1.4 lens. Do correct me if I'm wrong. There also appears to be a good amount of weather sealing for this type of lens, and Sirui claims that it is dust and splash resistant, but always take that with a grain of salt. The front glass also comes with a coating that repels water and oil/grease. They have also improved the lens cap designs on these ones, which has been a slightly minor complaint of mine on older Sirui lenses. And even the lens hood itself feels a lot better too. It's still not perfect, but definitely an improvement. Now, one thing to note is that Sirui are actively working on compatibility and optimizations with Sony cameras. So do check this list here to make sure that it will work currently with the Sony body and camera model that you own to avoid any disappointment. Just for reference, every video and photo sample you see in this review was shot with a Sony A7 IV. So 85mm lenses are usually considered an ideal lens for portraiture, as at this focal length you get that nice amount of compression that's flattering for human subjects and human faces. We talked about this in a previous video, but essentially you couple this optimum focal length of 85mm with a wide aperture like f1.4 and you're going to be able to not only get that compression but also get really nice subject to background separation. Personally, I love the way 85mm lenses really make subjects pop. It gives them this like a 3D effect, and the way it creates those smooth swirly backgrounds as well. And the Sirui Aurora definitely did not disappoint in this regard. As you can see, it does that really well, and having an f1.4 over an f1.8 just gives you that extra magical step of pop and bokeh. So we primarily shoot portraits, so it definitely excels at that, but also really at any kind of subject photography where you want to really separate the background from the subject. I also really love using this on a gimbal and getting those nice detail shots for B-roll and hero and portrait type shots. I think this lens is excellent for that as well. The focal length is definitely a little bit too tight if it was going to be your only lens, but if you pair this with something wider like a 24 or a 35 prime, I think that would be a really nice 2-lens setup for getting a nice mix of B-roll definitely. It doesn't have its own optical image stabilization though, by the way, so you will really need to put this on a gimbal or a tripod with like a fluid head if you plan to use this for video. 85mm in my opinion is a little bit too tight for hand holding, even with Sony's IBIS, so it will definitely be a struggle if you don't have some kind of stabilization. Now in terms of the actual image quality itself, this being a prime lens in particular, I am definitely very impressed with the sharpness of this lens. So unlike other Sirui lenses that we've reviewed in the past, this isn't going for that soft filmic type of look. You are getting that clinical, modern sharpness that you'd expect from a fast prime lens, and this definitely delivers that in spades. So here's just a few more photo and video samples. Now usually wide open lenses tend to be soft and need to be stepped down, but honestly even wide open at f1.4, this lens is still razor sharp in the middle with a good amount of contrast and detail, with some softness in the corners. Now one thing to note is that the chromatic aberrations, they definitely are quite noticeable in this lens, particularly in those corner areas. There is also some vignetting at f1.4, which does brighten up around f2.8 to around f4. I found that f2.8 was a good sweet spot for me where I could get decent corner to corner sharpness without that vignetting, but the color fringing does kind of remain there, albeit slightly lessened. But to be honest, with this being like a portrait lens, I don't think anyone really buys lenses like this for corner to corner sharpness. Those corners are going to be blurry anyway, and you are probably going to add a vignette anyway as well to make your subject stand out more. And also color fringing can be improved in post as well, so to me these don't take much away. They're very small compromises, and overall it is an extremely sharp lens where it matters. So if we pixel peep into some eyes here, you'll see in these photo samples that it does absolutely nail down the detail where it matters most, time and time again, whether it's f1.4, f2.8, f4, it's just crazy sharp throughout. The bokeh as well is lovely and smooth wide open, exactly what you want for portrait, and you get really nice circular bokeh balls as well, going slightly more cat-eyed towards the corners. And of course having f1.4 is just a really nice luxury for night and low light, and when you pair that with how great Sony bodies are in low light in general, that's just a really winning combination. Now focusing worked really well with Sony's IAF and face detect, making portraits an absolute breeze on this lens. My only minor gripe is while it did feel very reliable and tracked really well once it locked onto a face or onto an eye, it is a little bit slow. It's definitely not super snappy feeling. It's not really an issue with willing subjects or with still subjects, but probably not going to be the most ideal option for faster subjects or instances when you need fast focusing. So just do keep that in mind. That being said, with the Sony a7 IV and with things like bird and animal IAF, once it finds that eye, it locks on really well. If you're using this for video, the lens does focus through 360 degrees, but because the distance is quite far, if you do want to get those nice sort of focus pulling shots, it is better just to use touch to focus. But as you can see, it looks awesome. And in terms of focus breathing as well, it looks pretty good to me. The minimum focusing distance of this lens is 85 centimeters, so that is quite far, but again, for an 85mm prime lens, that is fairly typical. You wouldn't be using this lens for like close-up macro shots anyway, but just do keep that in mind. So with all of that being said, overall I have to say I have absolutely loved using this lens, especially as someone who shoots a lot of portraits. For the price, you're getting really sharp image quality and in a pretty nice premium-ish package at a very competitive price. I think if you're looking for an 85mm prime lens, I have said that the Sony 85 1.8 is like the budget king, but with all the improvements this lens has, I'd actually really advise that you consider this instead, considering it is much newer, has better build quality, has that improved f1.4 aperture. I think it's just a better lens in every aspect really. So for me, it's getting a huge recommendation for sure. And I think Sirui have a really fantastic lens here. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching if you made it this far. A huge thank you once again to Sirui for sending this lens to us. If you have any questions about this lens, then do leave them down there in the comments section below. And if you want to follow us on Instagram, you can do that down here. If you want to support the channel, hit that like button, subscribe, all that good stuff that the YouTube algorithm likes. And as always, I'll see you on the next video. Peace.